Hello, everybody. It's Jillian Sakovits. A very warm welcome to this very special and spicy NWSL playoff quarterfinal edition of Monday's Full-Time Review. Fresh with me now from CPKC Stadium is Tamerra Griffin. Tamerra, the Kansas City Current, had the greatest regular season in NWSL history, the fastest to win the Shield, most goals, most points, most wins. But Gotham says, we don't care. Girl, take me inside. Take me inside CPKC Stadium. How are you feeling right now?
Honestly, blessedly warm because, and you know what, Jill? People had been warning me when they knew that I was going to be traveling to Kansas City from California. They were like, bundle up. It's supposed to be really cold this weekend. And so like any dutiful reporter, I've been tracking the weather from home in California so I could prepare. It was even colder than what my weather app prepared me for. I was thinking it was going to be 49 degrees at kickoff. It was 31 and felt like 11. And
I saw the feels like. Yeah. I saw the feels like. From a wet bulb to 11 feels like.
In
Kansas City's been doing it all to us this year.
Truly. But, that didn't stop people from coming out. They still had a sellout crowd as they have had all season. People were out. They were clad in their teal. They brought their voices, their energy. They were ready to go. So props to Kansas City Current supporters for braving all kinds of weather this season. There was no way that they were going to miss out on a chance to cheer this team on in their quarterfinals as hosts. And you know what? Like you said, Gotham did not care about any of that. They didn't care about the fact that they have never beaten the Kansas City Current in this current iteration of Kansas City in their history together, postseason or regular season. They stole the game. And I'm actually still kind of processing it because even when the score was 0-0 during regulation, I personally, as a neutral, was really enjoying myself. I thought the football was crisp. These were two teams who not only are well acquainted with playing in the postseason, but clearly were well acquainted with each other. I thought the defenses were both extremely studied. They were not giving a lot of chances on either side. I thought the offenses, which is kind of where, to me, like the real texture of the story is between these two teams, because the Kansas City Current were without Temwa Chawinga, two-time Golden Boot winner, two-time in a row last season in this one, and Gotham FC were without Esther Gonzalez, the Golden Boot runner-up this season. So I don't think there was a super high expectation that this game was going to be high scoring, but props to the defenses, which include both goalkeepers, Lorena and Katrin-Berger of Gotham FC, Lorena with Kansas City Current. They both were called to make some massive saves throughout regulation of the game. And like I said, as a neutral, I was really enjoying myself. But of course, as regular time sort of wanes, you start anticipating extra time. And I kind of can't believe that Gotham pulled it off. I mean, Jaedyn Shaw had that goal in the 68th minute. Really uncharacteristic mistake, I would say, from Kansas City Current center back Kayla Sharples, who I think has been phenomenal all season. Like Defender of the Year candidate worthy performances.
Such a stud back there, and
it was unfortunate. And Jaedyn Shaw, she's new to Gotham FC. She just joined.
She's not acting new to Gotham FC.
Not acting new at all.
Including dropping the quote, "Underdog my ass, we are not an underdog." I'm loving the Gotham FC iteration of Jaedyn Shaw. I just have to throw that out there. Tamerra, 490 days since the Kansas City Current last lost at home. And it's in arguably one of their biggest games in franchise history. Can you just take me mood-wise inside there? When did it start to feel like a possibility that the Current, who everybody had as favorites to win the whole thing, could be it?
Yeah, I mean, it happened twice in this game, I would say, since Gotham FC scored first with about 20 minutes left in regular time before you include stoppage. And it wasn't until the 5th minute of stoppage time in the second half that substitute and defender Ellie Wheeler scored an equalizer that nearly was saved by Katrin-Berger. I mean, she got a hand on it and it still bounced in the back of the net. And I thought there was a really interesting, almost like masochistic moment where Katrin-Berger turned around and watched the goal on the replay on the Jumbotron behind her as Casey was celebrating. But I think in the 26 or so minutes between Jaedyn Shaw's goal and Ellie Wheeler's equalizer, things were not looking great. You could feel a shift in the crowd. There were sort of these waves of times where it's almost like the fans remembered that they needed to continue supporting the team. And then these silences when the reality started to sink in that the clock is ticking. We still don't have this goal. What's going to happen? We do not lose at home. This is a team that went unbeaten all season at home. And so that was, I think, the first dip. The second one, of course, was when Katie Stengel, in the first minute of stoppage time, in extra time, this is after the regulation has ended, when she scored off of what, honestly, when I've looked at it on replay, looked almost undefendable. Ann Katzenberger played a long ball. It was flicked on by, again, substitute Kayla Duran of Gotham FC. Jaedyn Shaw had an incredible flick with the outside of the foot, super saucy, and it kind of dropped like a gift, an early holiday gift or something, to Katie Stengel, who hammered it home with her left foot. And again, the crowd fell silent. There was even less time to respond than there was in regulation. And I think that was, as we usually say in sports, the dagger that sort of put Kansas City's championship hopes to bed.
You know what comes to mind is so often you see this in sports, especially in the game of soccer, where there's multiple dozens of games throughout the regular season. You start to wonder if, because they've never lost at home this season, in these moments where if you experience it, you know how to deal with it. And you almost look at it like, okay, well, that was a blessing in disguise, or that was a learning moment. And you almost wonder, like, would it have been better for the Current to go through that in, say, August or say, September, and say, okay, we've gotten the losing out of the way at home, or we know how to battle back when the crowd's not in it, or the wind is out of ourselves, or we're a little bit nervous. You know, that's just the mental side of the game of where I go. And I start thinking about, I'd love to know the mental side, Tamerra, of the fans. Like, did you talk to anyone? What was the mood like when you were walking out of CPKC Stadium tonight?
I actually, unless I was like directly speaking with someone, don't think I made eye contact with anyone, because when I was walking from the press box to the press conference room, which is a bit of a walk, you know, you go through the stadium, everyone's eyes were downcast. It just felt like the air had been let out of the side of CBKC Stadium. And on the one hand, I spoke to a few people who kind of openly admitted that it hadn't really hit them yet what had happened, because when you have won the league and won the Shield by the kind of margin that the Kansas City Current have achieved this season, it's hard not to imagine yourself already in San Jose at PayPal Park on November 22nd for the NWSL championship. Like, no one would ever openly admit that. Right?
I would admit it, right? Like, in my mind, that was one of the teams that was going to be there.
I mean, this was the kind of game that ruined so many people's brackets, except maybe for Gotham FC fans, if you think about it. And I think that the heartbreak of this kind of game, especially to lose in that kind of manner, my mind was already going to penalties by the time Katie Stengel scored that game winner at the end of extra time. And I think that the unspoken maybe expectation of how far this team was going to go, given how consistently excellent they've been throughout the season, given how quickly, as you mentioned, they won the NWSL Shield, given how unbeatable they were up until maybe a couple of weeks ago, as the Houston Dash proved. This was not in the cards at all. I don't think for anyone in that stadium who was rooting for this team, not even a possibility, even without Temwa Chawinga, even without Michelle Cooper, who even more surprisingly was not included in the roster. She picked up an injury in the game against San Diego. So it was pretty forlorn, and I still don't think that the reality has hit yet. So pour one out for your Kansas City friends, because this is going to be a tough offseason for them, I think, especially given how last season went, losing in the semifinals at home as well.
So many regular season records that, you know, I rattled off just some off the top. But Tamerra, when you think about this Kansas City team and the expectations, is 2025 a success for the Kansas City Current?
The players said yes. Vladco, head coach of the Kansas City Current, said yes. You, I'm sure, are very familiar with the debate about which trophy sort of matters more, whether it's the Shield or the championship.
The course of the regular season, which is 8-9 months, yes, or is it the sprint of 3 to 4 weeks? But this is the USA where we want the postseason championship.
It's a very like culturally coded debate, right?
Yes. Of course, the Shield, the regular season record is by far more challenging and more impressive. We know that, but that's not how we measure sports in this country.
Exactly. And it's a really interesting tension with a sport like soccer, which is so global. But head coach Vladco Ananovsky in the post-game press conference said that he didn't think that there was anything for these players to be hanging their heads over because their season was a major success. They made history for their club. They're continuing to build. He made a really interesting comment about the health of the squad and reminded me, at least, that last season they were also without Bia Zanerato, the same way they were without Temwa Chawinga this season. Lola Bonta, I think he mentioned, went down with an injury in their semifinal match against the Orlando Pride. Elizabeth Ball, like you can draw some parallels. And he basically said that we just need to get into the postseason with a healthy team. And if we are healthy, we are dangerous. And I actually would agree with that. But I think Kansas City accomplished something that is it's hard to win a Shield. But the margin by which and the quickness with which they won the Shield just adds to the accomplishment for them. And I think that that's something that it's a trophy that's already in the case. No one will be able to take that away from them. But like I said, when you have won the Shield in the way that you did, I mean, they only lost 3 games all season.
No, it's unbelievable.
Season. So it's going to sting no matter what. As the regular season was coming to a close, I found myself thinking that in sort of similar ways that we were saying last season that the Orlando Pride needed to win the championship for Marta, I kind of felt like the Kansas City Current needed to win the championship for Vladco. And I don't mean that in the literal sense, but when I think about his coaching journey, you know, starting in NWSL, of course, and then there was that stint with the U.S. women's national team in their historic World Cup exit in 2023, and then he comes back to the Current and starts building with them. And I can only imagine the wounds of that World Cup era when he was with the U.S. women's national team and the sort of redemption that he had when he returned to Kansas City. And last season, they were excellent as well. And it just seemed like this kind of could have been his moment to heal a little bit, you know, like at least in public when in these sort of tangible terms that we can all sort of measure by. And so I honestly do feel, I feel for him.
Oh, it's gut-wrenching.
You know, and that's before we get to the players.
But I have to say, it's like there'll always be this giant asterisk now with this team of, the epic 2025 Kansas City Current that had a really early exit. And for me, I'm not calling their season a failure, but for me, that result is a failure. I remember so vividly when I covered Atlanta United in MLS in 2018, they totally crapped the bed, for lack of a better word, on decision day. They lost to Toronto FC, who I think was bottom of the table, 4-1, and they could have won the Supporter Shield, and they didn't. And I remember our commentator, Dan Gargan, who won a championship with the LA Galaxy, said, if they go on to win MLS Cup, nobody's going to remember who won the Supporter Shield in 2018. And it's true. Everybody knows who won the championship in 2018. I couldn't tell you who won the Supporter Shield. So while it's exciting in the moment, I don't think now this team has the same, grasp on history that they would had they, I don't even think it's close, had they been this epic regular season team that was able to continue it through this postseason. So while I understand all of the caveats and all of the things that this team has been through, absolutely it's devastating when you think of Chawinga. I still think that this takes a lot of wind out of the sails of calling this like a historically epic team.
It's a fair point. And I think
do. And it bums me out.
It really emphasizes, too, the importance of Temwa Chawinga. I mean, without her, the team, including this game, went, they lost to Houston, they beat San Diego, and then they lost to Gotham. Yeah. 2-1, you know? Half of their losses happened when the Houston game, she played maybe 25 minutes before the injury. But if we consider that a game in which they were without her, half of their losses this season, regular season and post, were without Temwa Chawinga.
Yep. Yeah, that screams MVP, doesn't it? Yeah, it certainly does. Let's give Gotham FC their flowers as well. Leaving the building
for us.
Leaving the building tonight, Tamerra, knowing that now there is a semifinal and a final to go. How should Gotham FC fans be feeling?
Oh, I'm sure they're still like swinging, wrapping their like white towels and white t-shirts around at the bar. Like, I think true Gotham fans were not as worried going into this game as the rest of us may have been. On our Wednesday full-time episode, because Theo asked Meg and I to compare the playoff games to takeout orders, and I said that Kansas City, I know, honestly, an iconic prompt, but I likened this game between Gotham and Kansas City to dumplings because Gotham has been so up and down this season. They've dealt with injuries. They had the introduction of Jaedyn Shaw, who's completely breathed new life into this team, as we saw today. She had a goal and a game-winning assist, which is crazy.
Yeah, she's needed what's just amazed me about her is how she has not needed any time to adjust.
Right.
It's like she got dropped off with all her best friends.
She's technically been on 3 teams in this calendar year. Like that, and she's just been climbing steadily. They were playing in other tournaments. They had a lot of international players who were off at either the Euros or Copa America Femenina or WAFCON. They were playing in the CONCACAF W Champions Cup and had a lot of crazy travel included in that. They weren't the only ones in the postseason who were having to do that. Orlando and Washington Spirit too, so it wasn't only them. But they've had a lot on their plate, let's just say that. And I think that full plate sort of showed if you look at the ups and downs of their season. And I think especially in the last 3-4 games of the season, they were looking really shaky, really inconsistent. They lost 3-2 to North Carolina, but were down 3 goals for most of the game, except for those last 2 last-minute goals. And so heading into this Kansas City game, I think from the outside, you're kind of like, which Gotham is going to show up to this game? Because that's going to change. That's going to determine everything. But when I looked at the starting 11 between Kansas City and Gotham, just on paper, literally, it was already tilting toward Gotham to me. Gabby Portillo was back. She's been injured a bit and, managing minutes. Rose Lavelle and Jaedyn Shaw and Midge Purse. This is a lot. Emily Sonnet, a lot of players specifically, and I include Jess Carter in this. I include Ann-Katrin Berger in this. These are players who have been in the depths of knockout football before. And I think that experience and that leadership was really on display because they didn't really wobble too much throughout the whole game.
Yeah, Emily Sonnet now with an NWSL record, 15 playoff appearances. They give that kind of vibe of like, hey, when you get in the end zone, act like you've been there before. These are some players who they've been there before. Tamerra Griffin, thank you so very much. And before we say goodbye today, as promised, some breaking news out of a city that is near and dear to my heart, Atlanta, Georgia. Sources saying that Atlanta lands an NWSL expansion franchise backed by Arthur Blank, owner of the Atlanta Falcons of Atlanta United, for a record $165 million. That coming from Asla Pellet. Now, when you look at this article, it's really exciting because there's been rumors for so long around Atlanta getting an NWSL team, but go read it, go check it out. Nothing's confirmed yet, but what stood out to me was the quote from the spokesperson for Arthur M. Blank Sports and Entertainment saying, quote, "We have had a productive engagement with NWSL and others in its stakeholder group on the possibility of bringing an expansion franchise to Atlanta. We have nothing to announce currently as those conversations are ongoing." That does it for our show today. Thank you so much for hanging out with us on Fulltime Review. If you have any questions, comments, concerns, send it over to us at fulltime@theathletic.com or send us a DM on Instagram or TikTok. Did you know The Athletic has partnered with Yahoo Sports to provide free best-in-class coverage of women's sports? That's right. Go check out the Women's Sports Hub at sports.yahoo.com/women-sports. Full-Time does not happen without our podcast producer, Theo Lloyd Hughes, our video producer, Leah Griffin, and our executive producer, Emily Olson. Enjoy the chaos. We'll see you soon.